A reading from Psalm, chapter 19, verses 1 through 4, from the Complete Psalms translation. The sky unfolds the story of your presence. The firmament tells of the work of your hands. Day after day overflows with speech. Night after night breathes out knowledge. There is no word or phrase in which the voice of your creation is not heard. Throughout all the earth, rope of their hopefulness goes forth, and their words reach the end of the world's long stretch of land. From the edge of the sky, you bring it. Its sweep continues until the horizon's long stretch of land. Nothing remains untouched by its warmth. Your teaching is everywhere, reviving the soul.
I was somewhere between 5 and 6 years old when I begged my older cousins to let me sleep outside with them in my granny's front yard. Now, my granny lived at the top of a big hill in South Carolina, surrounded by large, towering oak trees. In the warm summers, it was actually cooler outside most nights than inside. But convincing my cousins that I was old enough and brave enough to sleep outside, that was no small feat. I then began to do what any determined 5-year-old would do. I lugged out every sleeping bag and quilt I could find, basically dragging half of the linen closet across the yard to prove how strong I was. I forfeited most of dinner to make sure I didn't miss anything or leave room for anyone to change their minds about my readiness for the great sleep out of 1979. Looking back, skipping my granny's cooking was probably the greatest sacrifice I've ever made for anything. I made a soft pallet on a grassy patch at dusk, and I just sat there, waiting for the dark. After dinner, my older cousins finally joined me, and then the night came alive. The sounds of crickets and tree frogs filled the air, and the stars and lightning bugs began to appear. With the lights from the house off, it was like watching holes being punched through the night sky as each star came into being, a nightlight for the whole world. My neck started to hurt from looking up, so eventually I laid down on the mossy grass to take it all in. But then the sky turned from blue to black. Deep, deep country black. Not city black where there's always a street light or a gas station sign somewhere. No, this was where did everything go sort of black. Wait a minute, I said. Nobody told me it does that. I wasn't ready. Turn it back. Already annoyed with my questions and my 5-year-old commentary because I had a lot of both, my cousin Candy said to me, just try and count the stars and go to sleep. And I tried to count them, I really did, but I only knew up to 100. And there was no way and way more than that I could count. Like maybe 1,000, 600, which for the record is not a real number, but it felt right. That night, lying on a hill in South Carolina, I experienced something that I didn't have a word for yet. I've since learned the word is awe, or sheesh. That's when something so beautiful, so big, and so amazing fills you up with wonder, so much that it's simply impossible to take it all in, or even sometimes find the words for it, or measure it in any concrete way. It's bigger than 1,000, 600. It's the feeling that the world is more than you thought, and you are smaller than you assumed, and somehow that's not a bad thing. So let me ask you, when was the last time you truly stopped and looked at the sky, the mountains? Not a glance as you rushed from your car to the grocery store, already mentally arguing with yourself about whether you need to buy another box of Thin Mints from the Girl Scouts, nearly blocking the door. You do, but that's between you and God. I guess what I'm asking is, when did you really stop? Tilt your head back and allow yourself to fully be absorbed into what you saw. I ask because I think most of us have forgotten how to see. We move through our days with our eyes open, but our vision has narrowed. We're always focused on the next task, the next obligation, screens rather than scenes. We've become experts at looking without seeing and passing through creation without truly experiencing it or fully taking in the life around us. Why is it that we can FaceTime someone on the other side of the planet, but we haven't seemed to notice the tree outside our own window or pause long enough to listen to the wind? And in February 2026, the need to recover our sight is more urgent than ever. We are living through a season of profound cultural grief and anxiety. Our screens confirm the conflict, uncertainty, and outrage. But the truth is that we are overstimulated and underawed, saturated with information, but starving for wonder. In a time when so much feels heavy with division and dread, we need the ancient corrective the psalmist offered thousands of years ago. What the heavens declare is not just that something vast exists, but that the fundamental grain of the universe runs towards beauty, toward connection, toward what the psalmist notes is a warmth reviving the soul. The psalmist knew something that we've forgotten. In those beautiful ancient words from Psalm 19, the sky unfolds the story of presence. Day after day, it overflows with speech. Night after night, breathes out knowledge. There is no word or phrase in which the voice of creation is not heard. But did you catch that paradox? Creation speaks without words. The heavens testify without language. Day after day, night after night, the natural world pours forth a message that transcends human speech, declaring something fundamental about reality, about the divine, and about our place in the cosmos. God has been posting content since before the internet existed. Now, the beginning of Psalm 19 is what scholars call a creation hymn. In the ancient world, experiences with the natural world were more the norm than the exception. People found rhythm in their days and nights by paying attention. There was no blue light from a phone keeping them up at night, just actual blue sky calling them to wake up in the morning. The Hebrew word kavod at the beginning of this psalm refers to treating something with honor, respect, or glory. Its literal root meaning is weight or heaviness. It signifies giving serious, substantial value to God rather than treating the divine lightly. The psalmist David is speaking to God's weighty and majestic splendor. The skies do not just hint at a creator. With the horizon's long stretch, they actively declare and proclaim one. This was significant in the surrounding ancient Near Eastern cultures of Mesopotamia, Egypt, and Canaan. The sun, the moon, the stars were worshipped as gods themselves. But Psalm 19 subverts that entire notion. Nature itself is not a deity. It's a witness to God, the Creator. The psalmist is speaking from a place of profound wisdom, not naivete, honoring the created world that offers wordless testimony to something greater than ourselves, an ecosystem that we are a part of, something our ancestors called God, that we might call the sacred, the divine, the ground of our being. Whatever language we use, the psalmist insists that nature itself is a primary revelation, a fundamental knowing that humanity has had access to since we first looked up at the stars and felt something shift inside of us. That's the awe, the sheesh that we've been talking about for the past few weeks. For thousands of years, spiritual traditions have known that encounters with nature can be transformative. Now contemporary science is catching up with ancient wisdom. Dr. Keltner, a psychologist at UC Berkeley, has spent decades studying the emotion of awe, and his research confirms what the psalmist knew. Awe changes us. Keltner defines awe as the feeling we get in the presence of something vast that transcends our current understanding of the world. Awe is that catch in your breath when you stand at the edge of the Grand Canyon. It's the tears that come unbidden as you watch the sunset. It's the stillness that descends when you're a 5-year-old girl on a hill in South Carolina trying to count a sky full of stars to 1,600. What Keltner's research reveals is remarkable. Awe literally changes our sense of self. In moments of awe, our individual ego diminishes. We experience what he calls the small self effect, a sense that we are a part of something much larger than our individual concerns and anxieties. Turns out that small self is actually liberating precisely because it comes with belonging, with realizing that we are not alone but connected, and we are held in a vastness that is not indifferent, but a part of us and a part of it all, a creation filled with infinite wonder and possibility. What matters is that we are a part of this interconnected web of being that was here long before us and will continue long after we're gone. And we are held in time that is dynamic and evolving, part of the ongoing process in which God and the world are co-creating. My friends, this is not static or a one-way process, but dynamic and evolving, a conversation and engagement with creation itself and with a God who sees that life is not a finished product, but rather one in which God and the world are co-creating all the time. But here's what's most relevant for us today. When Keltner surveyed thousands of people about their experiences of awe in nature, nature emerged as the single most common source. It wasn't the once-in-a-lifetime trip to Machu Picchu or to see the Northern Lights, though those certainly inspire awe. People named nature as the thing above all other things that inspired them. Aspen trees as they shimmer, sandhill cranes in flight, clouds moving across the sky, the play of light on water in a mountain stream. Friends, we can save money on plane tickets and the inconvenience of airport parking and simply find a park bench and pause for 5 minutes. In 2024, the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. partnered in the cultivation of awe. While only 800 people were lucky enough to get a slot, researchers invited participants to take in art, including the abstract paintings of Georgia O'Keeffe and the landscape designs of Jasper Francis Cropsey. What they concluded is that you didn't need to know anything about the art piece itself to receive the benefit. You simply needed to slow down enough to take it in. You see, the point was not to see it all, but to see a few things or even one thing deeply. It reminds me of the beginning of the movie Contact. Do you remember it? It opens with Jodie Foster, whose character is a scientist, and she is sitting for this extended, long period of time, patiently waiting, trying to tune a radio dial. for hours on end. She's listening to a certain radio frequency that would indicate that there is intelligent life beyond the earth. She's been doing this work for years, trying to make contact. But thankfully, it doesn't take that long for us to make contact with God, because God is constantly reaching towards us through nature, beauty, and awe all around us. Our job is to simply tune in with our whole selves. Research is also clear that people who regularly experience awe are more generous, more humble, more curious, less stressed, and report greater life satisfaction. Who wouldn't want that, right? It turns out that the perception for what ails much of modern life isn't another productivity app, but just simply taking time to notice beauty. But the psalmist isn't recommending awe just because it reduces our cortisol. The psalmist is overwhelmed by the wonder of God, and awe is simply a response to the holy when creation pulls back the curtain just enough for us to see a glimpse of the scale of the story that we belong to. The psalmist wasn't just waxing poetic about sunrises in writing Psalm 19, but echoing what spiritual traditions have always taught, describing a practice of paying attention that opens us to the divine presence woven through all of creation. When we truly see the heavens declaring God's glory, when we allow ourselves to be moved by the beauty and the vastness of the natural world, we are participating in one of the most ancient forms of prayer, one that requires no words, no special training, no seminary degree, just the willingness to have an open heart and open eyes. So I wonder, what happens when we recover this ancient practice of paying attention to the natural world? Not as a resource to be exploited or a backdrop to our busy lives, but as a spiritual discipline in which we see ourselves intertwined with every living thing. In 2026, this feels almost radical. We live in an attention economy designed to fragment our focus into millisecond increments. Every app, every algorithm, every notification is engineered to keep us skimming the surface of everything and into the depths of nothing. The practice of deep seeing, whether seeing a painting, a mountain, or a single tree outside your window, is countercultural. Every time you put your phone down and look, really look at the world around you or the person in front of you, you are staging a tiny holy revolution and opening yourself to wonder, awe, and God. But what about when you're not standing on a mountaintop or walking through a peaceful forest, but trapped in the muck and chaos of life? I want to tell you about a tree. A chestnut tree that stood in the courtyard of a building in Amsterdam. For most people walking by, it was just a tree, unremarkable, ordinary. But for a young girl hiding from the Nazis in a secret annex, the tree became a lifeline to transcendence. Anne Frank wrote in her diary on February 23rd, 1944, that, quote, "Nearly every morning I go to the attic to blow the stuffy air out of my lungs. From my favorite spot on the floor, I look up at the blue sky and the bare chestnut tree, on whose branches little raindrops shine like silver, and at the seagulls and the other birds as they glide on the wind." She went on to say that as long as this tree exists, I thought, I may live to see it, the sunshine, the cloudless skies. While this lasts, I cannot be unhappy. Let that sink in. A 13-year-old girl hiding from death found awe in a tree. in birds, in nature. Awe is not a luxury for people with easy lives, but a survival strategy for the human soul. It is the thing that tethers us to hope when everything else is trying to pull us under. Anne Frank found the heavens declaring God's glory from an attic window. If she could find wonder in a chestnut tree seen through a crack in the curtains, what might we be able to find if we actually opened our eyes and paid attention? Maybe you're still not convinced, thinking that the nights of which the sky is black and there's no awe, or maybe that creation feels indifferent or even hostile at times. Maybe you're thinking about climate change, grief, political despair, and they're all weighing heavy. And so just to hear a look at the stars feels like one more deaf, empty invitation. That's fair. But sometimes our capacity to see and feel awe is truly limited. But going back to the psalm itself, it's the very practice of looking and listening that matters, of being open and cultivating a practice of paying attention rather than trying to get it right or finding a magic cure in the clouds. Awe doesn't change what's in front of us. It changes how we see what's in front of us. Just as Psalm 19 says, creation speaks without words. Transformation comes often, not through a voice or a vision, but through a silent, overwhelming clarity of a God who is near, generous, and present in the wonder and awe of the world. This is the same God who brought the stars into space and cares about each and every person, every place, and everything that has ever been created. So here's my invitation to you, not as a nice idea, but as a spiritual practice for this week and beyond. I'll make it easy for you. You actually learned it already in order to cross the street. In order to cultivate awe, first stop. Find one moment each day to truly see something in the natural world. It doesn't have to be the Grand Canyon in person, but maybe a picture of it, or the way the light falls through your kitchen window in the morning, the shape of a cloud, the stubbornness of a weed pushing through a crack in the sidewalk. Then look. Not with the hurried glance of someone passing through, but with the patient gaze of someone who believes there is something worth seeing. You don't need to see everything. You just need to see one thing deeply, to be absorbed in the beauty of it, whether it be music, art, or nature. And then finally, listen. The heavens are still declaring the glory of God. Day after day, the sky still pours forth speech. Night after night, the stars still reveal knowledge. The question has never been whether creation is speaking, but whether we are paying attention, open to a creator who lures all things towards beauty and connection. Somewhere out there, right now, a 5-year-old is lying on a grassy hill, looking up at a sky full of stars, trying to count to 1,600 or make her way to space camp. And in that moment, that child knows something that many of us have spent years forgetting, that this world is more beautiful than we have words for, and that the one who made it is still speaking. Awe is not just our response to God, but also God's invitation to us. May we have ears to hear and eyes to see. Our takeaways for today are: awe is a spiritual practice, not just a feeling. It doesn't require extraordinary circumstances, but being intentional right where we are. Second, when we stop treating the natural world as a backdrop and start treating it as a source for encountering the divine, We participate in one of humanity's oldest forms of prayer. And finally, the question again isn't whether creation is speaking, it's whether we are open to hear. Take good care.